It's 2024, y'all. Happy New Year. New year, new Warriors. Well, at least new starting lineup for Steve Kerr, right? That's kind of been the headline. Out is Brandon Pajemski, out is Kevon Looney, in is Chris Paul, in is Trace Jackson Davis. And when Kerr was initially asked about the lineup change, I thought the comments were kind of telling. He said, one, we're trying to just shore some things up defensively. And then we're also trying to get Steph going. So I think that is them kind of finally acknowledging like, hey, Kevon isn't where he needs to be right now to be playing this type of role for us. And, it's interesting because the Iron Man thing with Loon these last couple years, I think it's starting to pay a cost for it, right? It became silly. Initially, you got it and you were like, everyone, I think was, oh, Loon doll, right? Like you're rooting for it. And then it was like, all right, what's the point? You remember when Brett Favre did that all those years ago for the Packers? Maybe I'm reaching. Some of you were too young for that, but it got to a point where it's like, bro, just rest the game. Like you're just, and so I don't know if that's part of him and his body is kind of he's paying a toll for that. Obviously, he could be in better shape, and I think with Loon is one of these low maintenance guys, right? Where you never worry about Loon. He's always in good spirit. He always shows up and does his job, but in turn I think he can kind of slip between the cracks, right? And when it comes to like, hey, is he in shape? Hey, what is he? Because you don't worry about him. And sometimes that's a good thing. But I think in this case, it's kind of been a bad thing. And it's allowed him to kind of get out of shape and not be where the Warriors need him to be. So Trace in his place at the center spot, I think we were all waiting for, right? We were all waiting for that one. I think Chris Paul in there is a more interesting discussion. And Kerr saying, hey, we want to get Steph going. Yeah, it kind of makes sense, even though Chris wants to play at a completely different pace. I think more directly what it means is ensure that Clay doesn't start games like it's NBA Jam, right? Because that used to be Draymond's role. And don't get me wrong, that they've started plenty of games where clearly they want to get Clay going. But we know you give Clay an inch, he's going to try and take a mile, right? And so I think part of Chris in the starting lineup is to just ensure at least Steph gets the touches if he wants them. Lately, it hasn't seemed like he's even wanted them, right? But I think it's more of CP playing the Draymond role as the floor general of like, hey, dude, like he's got to touch the ball because we've seen it when he's been experimenting in these lineups. And Pajemski, as good as he's been, he's still a rookie. And you'll watch the first 5 minutes of the game. You're like, that's 6 shots from Clay. Steph hasn't even dribbled, right? I think that's kind of what that was about. But at least initially, this new starting lineup wasn't successful. And that was a rather discouraging loss to Dallas at home the other night. And then Kerr gave us these quotes. We haven't found the grit that every good team needs, where you pull together and you just play for the group. You listen to the plus minus boys, Slater and MT, and they said, hey, he's talking to two guys. He's talking to two guys. And everyone's like, all right, well, it's Clay and Kuminga. It's Clay and Kuminga. And I had a little bit of fun with y'all on Twitter. And I said, hey, he's talking about Clay and Steph. He's talking about Clay and Steph. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. I have no doubt that Kuminga is part of this. There's no reason it only has to be two, right? There could be two main guys. And so I said that a little facetiously just to catch your attention. And that's hopefully what I've done. So hear me out. Clay, I think we've gone over this over and over again. Someone had sent me a video of him throwing a tantrum on the sidelines from that Dallas game. Like it's bad news. It's bad news with what's going on with Clay right now. And I think that he, if you want to be honest, is the root of a lot of these issues. And again, I'm not absolving Kuminga. I think we know his frustration. I think his frustration is no, we can't excuse it. It doesn't matter. But I on the court actions, listen, the Kuminga thing I think may be in the background. I think it may be at practice. It may be on the flight. It could be just behind the scenes. From what I see on the court, Kuminga is really trying to do whatever they ask. They're like, you need to rebound more. He's rebounding more, right? You want to set screen. You want me to set up for others. He's trying to do everything. Clay, not so much. But back to Steph and him being part of this quote or this comment of not playing for the group. Now, I don't expect many of you to agree with me. I will preference this by saying I get up every morning, the morning after Warriors games, and I rewatch the game, edit the tape, narrate it, put the breakdown on my Patreon. So I see each game the equivalent of about 3 times, right? And I understand live and as a fan and in the moment and just watching it as a normal fan, like I miss a ton of stuff the first time, and I miss a little bit the second. The third time, I usually see a lot more like anybody else would, seeing a game that many times. Steph's playing hero ball. He's playing hero ball defensively. Everything is half-hearted. Like Steph's doing a lot of things defensively where it's like if you showed the tape, technically you could say, yeah, you closed out. Yeah, you were there, but you weren't there in spirit. There was no real intention behind it. And then again, late, playing hero ball, taking bad shots, forcing the issue. And so I got me thinking, like, why is he doing that? Is he just frustrated? Is he doing what he thinks is best? Like, that's the easy answer, right? Whenever a player's struggling, Clay, they're all doing what they think is best for the team. Are they? Because that's what Kerr's comments are alluding to. They're not. And I think Steph has become part of this issue. And if I were to guess why, I think he's starting to hear that clock ticking. He's seeing that window shrink. And in turn, I think it's making him play a little selfishly. Again, what is the root of the intent? Is he just trying to win? Or does he know, like, hey, man, I only have a little bit left of these prime minutes on a basketball floor in the NBA. Let me go get mine, right? And it's almost like Steph and Clay are brothers, right? And he's sat and watched Clay be so selfish and the team cater to Clay's ego. It can only not help but rub off on Steph a little bit. Maybe that's not fair, but again, all I can do is give you my opinion. But I do ultimately think Clay is kind of the root of the situation. I don't have an answer, man. I don't have an answer. I feel guilty for feeling the way I do about Clay right now, but I think we all kind of feel a certain way about Clay right now. And then keep your eye on Steph. Again, there's such ebbs and flows of a season. I'm not saying this is going to be forever how he is, but the last few weeks, Steph's played some bad hero ball and kind of selfish basketball in my eyes. And I get it. That's a very fine line when you're talking about Steph Curry, and it's just there's a gray area of is that a good shot? Is it a bad shot? Like, is there a bad shot for Steph Curry? And most people applaud whenever Steph is aggressive, whether it's efficient or not. And I understand that. You hear the phrase, passing is contagious, right? Well, greed is contagious. Ego is contagious because you see one person in your unit, your team, your circle being greedy, only looking out for themselves. And in turn, you start looking around, you're like, well, I better do the same because that looks like what everybody else is going to do, right? It can snowball. It can become a domino effect. And it starts at the top. So I understand Kuminga's probably had some attitude stuff behind the scenes, but at least on the court, he's showing face. He's showing what he's trying to do. But it starts with the face of the franchise and the leaders of this team. And Steph and Clay have to play for each other. And I think it'll have a positive domino effect down throughout the rest of the roster. Now, we got the Orlando Magic tonight, Underdog Fantasy. You can really help support the channel by signing up with my code and helping me reach my quota. I've got a tip for you here. I'm not going to give you picks because I have been winning taking picks at the half. I think that, so wait till this half here at Warriors Orlando and look at the higher points, higher whatever, and you're going to see some numbers that you really like because I'm not sure they're adjusting in time. And so I've been hitting these halftime picks for the last 2 weeks. That's my advice. Again, link in the description. Use the code Alchemy and you'll get 100% bonus on your first deposit. As far as this Magic team goes tonight, listen, I don't like the matchup. I do not like the matchup. We've known this for years. What type of teams bother the Warriors? Long, young, athletic teams. And that is the Orlando Magic to a T. Wagner, Banchero, Wendell Carter's back. Jalen Suggs might be the hardest playing player in the league, right? He is just a wrecking ball out there. Cole Anthony can give you buckets off the bench. So they've got the size, the youth, and the athleticism. I think it's going to take a really good shooting night to get this done tonight at Chase Center. But I think we are due a really good shooting night at Chase Center. As always, hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.